So we are about to go live. If you guys can just confirm, can everyone see my screen? The opening screen right now is SportsDesk Media Digital Ticketing Best Practices webinar. All right. Well, I think we got a yes on there. So again, this is Eric Fernandez, one of the co-founders and head of SportsDesk Media, and I wanted to welcome everyone to our webinar today. Looking forward to connecting with a number of our friends in the business and also with a number of folks that we haven't seen in a while. So today we'll go through over the next hour a number of the best practices that we've had over the years from working with a number of companies like yourself, both professional and collegiate teams, or a number of professional and collegiate teams, and sharing with you just best practices from numerous digital ticketing campaigns that we have. As well as we'll just start by giving you a quick overview of our company. But it wouldn't be appropriate to start this without giving Troy Kirby his appropriate shout out. So Troy, I see you're on the line. I appreciate you joining, and definitely want to give you your shout out, as well as a number of other folks that are on the line, Ken Troop, Brian Apgar, and a number of friends and colleagues. On the line with me today is Kyle Bowlesby, who is on our team. Many of you probably know Kyle. Those that don't, we will be available as a resource to you guys. So we'll go ahead and dive into today's agenda. As I mentioned, give you a quick overview of our company, just a very top line, and then really get into the heart of what you guys want to talk about today, which is what are the digital ticketing best practices that we've seen. And we're going to cover 4 key areas of the campaign process: the strategy and planning phase, going live with your campaign, really how do we maximize the path to purchase and really help drive conversions. And then lastly is looking at how can campaign analytics really help influence the things that we do. For starters, just a very quick background on who we are as a company. SportsDesk Media, we are a sports marketing firm that specializes in media and technology. And the way we work with our clients is one simple goal: how do we help take their online fan data and make it insightful and actionable for them? And the way we go about doing that is through integrating a deep level of fan analytics with the ability to activate against that through digital media. So the way I like to say it best is a lot of our clients that are sports teams speak in terms of uniques and page views or impressions. And what we like to do is say we can actually overlay third-party data to turn those uniques and impressions into profiles and personas that allow you to have a robust level of insights to make better decisions, such as how you should best execute a digital ticketing campaign. Between myself and our other founders, we collectively have 75 years of sports and digital experience. So very much like you, have sat in a number of your seats and can very much understand the pain points and the challenges you deal with on a daily basis. And that's why we built the platform, because we understand what you go through and we're here to help. And then lastly is we work with about 30 different teams and properties, helping them with all kinds of their needs that they have, whether it's ticketing, sponsorship, et cetera. So let's dive into digital ticketing and really kind of what we're all here to do today. We're going to share the best practices from a number of campaigns that we've run, and hopefully be able to give you guys some insights that can lead to success stories that some of our clients have achieved, whether it's Mississippi State, South Carolina, or the Corpus Christi Hooks, who have all run some very successful ticketing campaigns that have driven to their bottom line and given them some very solid ROI. One other last thing before we jump into the first phase of strategy and planning. We're going to ask some questions along the way. We're going to do some polling, assuming that we can get that to work and function properly. So we definitely would like everyone to participate. And if you have any questions along the way, if you go up into the top corner bar, you see the question mark. You can submit a question and Kyle and I can answer that. Or if you want to unmute your line, you can dive in, and you can ask a question along the way as well. So first thing, let's talk when we get into strategy and planning. So a number of the things that we're going to talk about today may seem common sense, and some of those things will, probably kind of seem just very off the top of the head that should be done. But what you'll be really surprised to know is a lot of the things that we see here are actually common mistakes that clients make. So first question, though, that we want to end, so we'll go and dive right into a poll here, and let's test and see how this works. Our first poll question, and Kyle, if you could see if we can put this up. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to or not. First question we have is how many of you have used digital media to sell? How many of you use digital media to sell tickets? And actually, I'll type that in here. Give me 1 second. There you go. You guys can take a moment to vote here. All right, we have 1 vote so far. Do we have any no's, any more before I stop the polling session? Okay. All right, so we've got a number of yeses and a few no's here. Total 10 respondents, so we'll jump into it. Well, that's good to know. 8 and 3, actually. That's good to know. It's good to know that we have quite a few folks who are active in using digital media to sell tickets, and some of you are still trying to learn, I guess, how to do that the best way for your organization. So let's go ahead and dive in on campaign strategy. And really the goal of this section is, before you ever put any media in marketplace, you want to do 2 things. Really ensuring that you're determining the best media strategies that are going to resonate with your target audience. And secondarily is ensuring that the ticketing products and offers that you have match what your audience needs and wants and needs are. The best practices that we've seen here, and again, we'll dive into this in a bit more, is using your fan data to inform your decisions. And then secondarily is looking beyond demographics. And again, we'll do another poll here. But real quickly, the question we have here is, how many of you get a weekly or monthly online analytics report and actually use it? So hang on 1 second and I will post that. Okay, so the new poll is just posted. If you guys can go ahead and answer that. And I see Troy on our last poll voted absentee ballot, which is great. Okay, have a few yeses, have a few nos. We'll let that poll kind of run in real time, and we'll let it go as we dive into the best practices. So one of the things that we found from working with a lot of our clients is quite a few use data, but sometimes the level of data that they use kind of varies. And most of the time when we start talking about the data, the client tends to focus on demographics. And want to share with you, just with some of the work, again, we've done with our clients, is how we're able to add a few more data points that really can help make this planning phase a little bit more productive. And again, what I'll take you through here in the next few slides is a planning process example that one of our clients went through, and it really shows you how the data was used to help inform the media campaign that they ran. So first thing is, this client went into the campaign with the objective of wanting to sell season tickets. And one of the first things that they did was took a look at the makeup of their current season ticket holders with their overall online fans, assessing all the traffic that comes across their site, and started with it from a demographic standpoint. So as you can see here, one of the first opportunities that they found was when they looked at their online traffic, vast majority of it was from the age group of 25 to 34, and that only represented about 4% of their current season ticket holder base. So they immediately saw an opportunity here to look to how they could make greater penetration with that 25 to 34 age group. The next thing they did, though, was wanted to understand what's the makeup of that group. And the one thing that was overwhelming was that this group of 25 to 34-year-olds, the majority of them had kids in the household. The vast majority, as you can see here, about 70% had kids in the household, and the majority of those were under the age of 12. So as you could see, with the exception of about 13%, they were all under the age of 12. So we had a lot of what we would consider young fans, young families, and they had kids. What the insight here, what the client understood was, maybe the focus being exclusively on season tickets was not appropriate, but how could we make it more focused on those mini plans that were family friendly? So focused on weeknight games, Friday, Saturday night, or Sunday afternoon that were friendly enough that a family could go, especially one that had small children. And then secondarily was the insight of looking at that a lot of these fans were more casual fans. So how do we really make this more of a family fun atmosphere? So not necessarily focusing on it being a sporting match or a game, but really an opportunity to kind of reposition family night out or family game night was part of their creative campaign. So the next bit of information that they looked at, so now we know we've got heavy 25 for lots of families. Let's start to look at when we want to reach them with media, what's the best way to reach them? We know that this fan is organically coming to our team site, but what else is this fan doing? And what we did here was looking at content. So fans who visited Team A's site, where else were they going online? And what this allows the team to do is verify, but also discover content and site targeting opportunities. So the way you read this chart here is this entire graph represents 100% of the browsing traffic of their fan base. So approximately 50% or half of it comes from these four categories of travel, sports, news, and technology. And the decimal points here represent indexing. So obviously anything above 1 is an over-index to the general population. Anything under 1 is under-index. So we could see here, very, very much aggregated into three categories of sports, news, and technology. But in addition to that, real estate seemed to be an opportunity. It was a smaller content set, as you kind of look here by the approximate size of the real estate bucket, but it was over-indexed, so it represented a place where they could connect with fans. And it made a lot of sense when you considered the demographics of their fans being in that 25 to 34 age range, many having young families. That's a ripe time when those individuals are looking to make their first home purchase. So that was good, keen insight that actually came to play in the creative strategy, which I'll touch upon in a minute. The last bit of information that they wanted to look at was what type of devices is our fan base using when they access our site and our content. And this was important because the client had asked, they were asking some good questions. Should I be using video media to promote my ticketing campaign? Should I be using smartphone media to be promoting my ticketing campaign? All of these were really good, productive questions, and that they wanted to get a better sense of where they should be investing their media. So the last kind of analytical analysis that was done was looking at their site traffic. And the way this breaks down is looking at 100% of the visits that come to their site over the last 30 days. What percentage came from a tablet versus a PC versus a smartphone? And you can see the breakout here. So this was really insightful because, again, not inconsistent or unexpected. As you tend to have a larger audience that's younger in age, you'll start to see the smartphone penetration move up as far as who's browsing there. And then the question becomes, how well is smartphone media at really helping to sell a ticketing product. So one quick sidebar before we get into kind of the conclusion here. What we wanted to do is share with you guys. We've done a lot of analysis over about 50 different campaigns to help understand, as we're looking to sell different ticketing products, what different devices and what different media are the most productive. The two key things to call out here when selling season tickets, mini plans versus single games. There's two anomalies that we see. One is that from a productivity standpoint, media on a smartphone device tends to be most productive when you're looking at a single game ticket. And a lot of this goes down to two reasons. One is the smartphone experience, the buying experience, does not tend to still be, it's a little bit laggard behind what you tend to see on a PC or a tablet device. Not very fan friendly, and it's hard to make a high thought decision like a season ticket or a mini plan on a small device like that. That tends to be a much more spontaneous type of decision. So we've actually, when we recommend to clients, if our focus is on season tickets and mini plans, we tend to keep a focus on PCs and tablets as the primary device media of choice. Secondarily is you see the types of media that tend to perform, have seen a lot of success with both display media and Facebook and ultimately driving transactions. But we actually see when you get into things like single games, Facebook actually performs a little bit better than display. And that also tends to be, especially for like minor league baseball, where you have a lot of very social atmospheres, a lot of fun involved in the games. It makes a lot of sense because it's very conducive to that smartphone media and to that type of environment. So again, I think the key takeaways here are depending on what ticketing product you want to promote, these are just some tips and some best practices that we've seen from a number of campaigns and what really performs where. The last comment I'll make is around this notion of online video. We get asked a lot of times by our clients about using video as part of their campaigns. And one of the main comment we make to them is video is really great for driving awareness and consideration. But if you're looking at on an apples to apples basis from a direct response perspective, it doesn't do as well as either display media or Facebook media. So we're not saying don't do it, but we're really looking, if you're looking to use video, it's a great way to seed the market or running complement to direct response media like display or Facebook. So real quick, before we jump into the next section, let me cover the conclusions, and then I want to see if we have any questions. So taking all that into consideration for Team A, where they netted out was approaching the marketplace with a strategy that was focused on delivering media and targeting fans that were 25 to 44, in particular with a family focus. Secondarily was they wanted to keep that focused within a 75-mile radius of their venue, knowing that their media was going to be split between mini plans and season tickets. They realized that they couldn't pull from too far of a radius trying to get somebody to come to that many events. The second point was they changed their product focus and really focused it more on that family-friendly mini plan versus the season ticket. Now, they still ran creative for both products, but it was, as you can see here, a 70-30 split of media weight, more shifted towards mini plans. It kept their media on targeted to PCs and tablets. And lastly, again, knowing that they're focused on more of those products that lend themselves to display advertising, did keep a mix of display plus Facebook, but skewed it towards display media. And lastly, from a content standpoint, focused on those content categories around sports, news, and technology, where they had big scalable size, but also heavy index. But they did do some testing with the real estate sites and real estate content markets. And it was a really nice campaign where they were actually focused around kind of this, analogy of comparing buying a home or finding your home to coming to our home for a game. So it was really just a nice play on words that they used there and was very well integrated with the content of the sites. And then they did some creative testing. They really came out and tested just kind of a general ticketing message, creative message, with also some game night messages. Again, really focusing on not targeting that hardcore fan, but going after the casual fan, and repositioning family night out and family game night as an opportunity to come to one of this team's games. So I'm going to pause there real quick and open up the chat line and see if there's any questions about strategy before we move into the next section, which is on actually taking campaigns live. So if anyone's got a question, feel free in the chat bar to open that up. Oh, here we go in the Q&A. Sorry. So there's two questions in the, if you guys go up to the top and you go to the questions, apologize, not the chat. If you have any questions, please come in here. We've got two that have come in. One is, will this PowerPoint be available for use after the webinar? The answer is yes. If you want to reach out to Kyle or myself directly, we'll be happy to send you guys the deck. Secondarily is, does the data that you've run suggest that season ticket holders prefer to interact with ticket e-brochures or email blasts? And that came from Troy Kirby. Troy, the short answer to that is the data doesn't seem to indicate that there's a preference of how they want to interact. The data, again, is very, it's not specific around particular polling that we've run, and we'll get into in a little bit in the third phase around path to purchase, some more specifics that we've seen around customer preference and how they want to contact or how they want to transact. But none of the data that we have suggests anything about season ticket holders in a particular preference, because again, we tend to look at it at more macro levels of just ticket transactors. And it's not necessarily at a granular level of comparing a ticket buyer or a season ticket holder versus just a general transactor. Okay. Is there any other questions at this point? Okay. Let's see here. So let's go back into the campaign live. So what I'd like to do here first by starting off over the next two, as you can see in the next two phases, phase 2 and phase 3, campaign live and path to purchase. I want to make an analogy between digital media and direct mail, because I think a lot of our folks, a lot of you are probably very familiar with direct mail, and really the process there of how you go from generating a lead and the purpose of closing a sale. And there's some analogies that can be drawn, especially when we start to get into some of the most common breakdowns. So the next section we're going to focus on is really around this campaign live phase of the campaign. And really here, the goal of this, if it's a digital ad or if it's an envelope, it's in direct mail, it's to get an open or it's to get a click. It's really about maximizing the number of engagements and responses that you get to your ad and to your campaign, and ultimately getting them into your buy cycle. There's 3 sets of best practices we're going to cover here. First is we're going to talk about prospecting versus retargeting and how it's best to use those in tandem and why that is. Second, we're going to talk about 2 ad creative strategies, really about how customization can actually lead to greater response, as well as promoting multiple games. And then lastly is we've had a number of questions come up around what's the right length of campaign duration, how much should I be investing in market, and how should I be flighting? Should I only be running ads on the day of a game? And we've had some experience again on what actually performs best from a digital ticketing standpoint. So we'll dive into those right away. So hang on, we have one more question. I'll go back to Brian Randall asks, was there a specific time of year for these campaigns focused on mini plans? Brian, that's a great question. The proper time that we saw for this particular sport, which was basketball, we started promoting about 45 days out from the season start. Typically what we've seen is we've had some clients that want to run campaigns really early, a lot earlier in the season. We typically recommend a window of a lead time where we've seen the best results is about 45 days out. Anything beyond 45 days, some of them we may stretch to 60, but even across sports, whether it's been minor league baseball, college football, professional football, a lot of the decision-making that we've seen for buying tickets, especially as you start to get into more mini plans and single games, those decisions don't really get made till probably 45 to 60 days or that 30 to 60 day window before the season starts. We don't really recommend. We had a couple clients that wanted to start campaigns really early, about 3 to 4 months out, and we just haven't seen the performance there. So we really recommend kind of waiting till you get to that 30 to 60 day window before a season starts, before you really start to promote those tickets, especially as you get into things like mini plans. And that's kind of the ideal window that we see. The only other kind of comment there is if your team's had a really, really good season, towards the end of the season, as they make their playoff run or right after the playoff run, there's about a window of about 3 weeks that you have to really push for renewals for the following season, whether it's season tickets or mini plans. Leverage the fact that you have that fandom at its all-time high and push for those renewals at that point. We've also seen success there. All right. Let's see if there's another question here. Staff marketing. Okay. I'm trying to keep tabs of all the notes and everything. Here. Okay, so going back to the best practices of Campaign Live. First thing is, let's get into the concepts of retargeting and prospecting. And just a quick definition, and then we'll do another poll question here, is I'm sure everyone's is familiar with retargeting. It's become one of the more common and productive tools for ticketing campaigns. Retargeting is basically, in its very general sense, it's serving ads to fans who've already organically visited your site. So a lot of teams we see doing this. They'll work with a retargeting company such as an ad roll, et cetera, where they'll put a remarketing tag on your site, and anyone who's come and visited, they'll get ads to try to sell them tickets. Prospecting is a little bit different in the sense of it's a form of where you you identify and target other online users, so fans maybe who aren't organically coming to your site, but it's based on the characteristics of your online fan. So said another way, it's really just a lookalike model. And it's a way of taking the underlying data from the fan base and the traffic that's coming to your site to be a little bit more discreet in how you go about finding other folks that could potentially be fans, but maybe aren't going to your site organically. So this is where we're going to do another poll question. I want to understand how many of you have used or are using retargeting. So I'm going to type that in. Okay, so that poll should be live. And as you guys are responding to that, I'll forward to the next slide so we can talk about how best to use these in tandem and why that is. All right. So we have a couple yeses. If you haven't used retargeting, if you'd respond, it'd be great to kind of get a sense of how many have and how many haven't. Quite a few yeses, one no. All right, I'll hold. There's a follow-up question to this, and we'll hold, but I'll go through this slide as that's finishing to load the poll. So prospecting and retargeting, using them in tandem. Why is that beneficial? Well, let's think of it this way. Most folks use retargeting. Again, it is a way of finding those folks who've been to your site. How do I get them to continue to come back, ultimately with the goal of making a ticket purchase? What we tend to see is a lot of the clients focus very much on just kind of retreading existing traffic to their site. So you have a lot of the same fans that continue to get hit over and over and over again. There's a lot of valuable data that can come from that knowledge of those underlying data points on that fan that can help you to refresh and kind of refill your funnel. So we've seen a lot of success, and a lot of our clients have had success in using both prospecting and remarketing or retargeting in unison. So the idea of using prospecting to go out, use your underlying fan data, go out and find folks that look like that, and now start to push them into your marketing funnel, where once you get them into your marketing funnel, based on the phase where they're at, you can continue to keep that dialogue with them and continue to push them down to the funnel. Now, we got this comment in here about look at shoppers versus buyers. What that really says is you start to get fans who maybe have engaged on your site, have maybe been to your ticketing landing page, but then haven't necessarily purchased. That's a great point to when you really want to use heavy retargeting. So the heavy retargeting should be at that point where you've had someone move from your site to maybe your Ticketmaster or your Paciolan page, but maybe haven't transacted. And really going after those individuals with some more heavy hitting messages around getting them to actually transact. That's a great way of converting the shopper and the buyer. Beyond that, using prospecting to help fill the funnel and then ultimately get them down through a series of different messages based on where the fan is in the funnel is a great way to start to move them towards that path to purchase of getting them into purchase. Just as a rule of thumb, just to give you guys a frame of reference, for the majority of the campaigns that we run, we use a combination of prospecting and retargeting. And we typically run anywhere from 40 to 60% of the impression. So we find it very productive, especially as you get into new products, or even as you move into single game tickets, where it's a much simpler decision for the fan to make. That you're really trying to find those fans anywhere that they're going, because a lot of fans are going to different content sources in order to get their information. Okay, had a couple more questions come in. One more question came in. This came in from Eric Kroll. What is your opinion of beginning a renewal process in the middle of the season or with approximately a month left in the current season for full season mini plan holders for the next season? So this was going back to the timing discussion we were talking with Brian's question. So Eric, couple thoughts there. One is, again, if you're right in the middle of a season, and let me back up a step. One of the things that we're seeing right now, let's take, we work a lot in the college space. Those college teams that have really good football programs, we have a lot of trouble selling tickets to for basketball until football is, the mindset for football is somewhat closed. So we start to see that those schools that have really productive football programs, whose football teams are having a good year, starting to promote basketball in the December timeframe, not trying to compete in November, is really the right time frame to do that. I think you can draw that similar analogy to when you start looking at your own team. If your team's having a really, really solid run and you're making it towards the playoffs, we don't really recommend, or to the postseason, really trying to try to drive renewals up until that point where you're almost moving from the close of the season into the playoffs, or right after the season has ended. Trying to start in the middle of the season, trying to start with 1 month left. We've actually tried that for a number of clients, and the results just haven't been as good as if we've done it either at the beginning of the next season or we've waited till the season later on. So not saying don't do it. We're just saying from a digital perspective, we haven't seen the results play out as well from a timing standpoint as compared to when we've seen it either done more towards the end or that 30 to 60 day period before the next season starts. Okay. All right. Trying to keep up with the questions here. I don't think there's any additional ones. Okay. So we will go back to Campaign Live. Again, so hopefully if anyone has any questions on the differences or prospecting versus remarketing, again, I think, again, a lot of you will probably be approached by retargeting companies talking about the value there. There is a tremendous amount of value, but would always encourage you to look at this a little bit more holistically about how you're going to continue to replenish and refill your marketing funnel, and not just continue to retread those customers or those fans that are continuously or already going there. Okay, so let's see. So the next thing, we've got two creative best practices, or two best practices related to creative. The first is around customization, and really here, this is, I guess somewhat self-explanatory, but the whole concept of if you can make a ad unit or you can make an ad, the creative ad, more relevant to your underlying audience, it's a great way to increase the performance. This is actually an example of a live campaign that the University of South Carolina did last year. where they had two very distinct groups of fans that they were trying to sell tickets to. They had kind of the young alumni that were much younger adults, tend to be single, and then they had this group of that were alumni with families. And as you could see here, the creative messages were very different. The actual landing pages and the products that each of these groups were offered were very different. The net effective is when we look across a number of different campaigns that use generic creative versus customized or targeted creative, relevant creative, we tend to see about a 20 to 30% increase in engagement rates, giving you a better chance of driving more quality traffic and better chance of ultimately closing the sale. So that's creative lesson or best practice number one, is really that targeting of the creative and making it relevant to your target base that you're targeting. And then secondarily is promoting multiple games. This one actually seems to be one of the most underused. We get a lot of clients when they're promoting or looking to promote a single game or a series of single games. They're just out there, it's just one game is being promoted versus a series of games. We actually recommend ultimately promoting 3 to 5 game options. Makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Just logically, not everyone can always be available for a certain game. Granted, it may be coming up, but there's a lot of options that the consumer tends to be online in more of a shopping phase. They're not necessarily in a buying mentality. So if they have the ability for options, when we see games where you've got 2, 3, 4 available options being promoted, the click-through rates and the engagement rates can increase anywhere from 10 to 15%. And then the last set of best practices here that we see in the campaign live phase is really around the duration, investment, and flighting of campaigns. I'm going to take a quick pause. There's a couple more questions that came in. So this goes back to, so I'm going to answer 2 questions that came in. One is from Doug York and the other is from Jason Millay. So we'll put campaign duration, investment, and flighting on hold for a second. So Doug's question was, have used both, this is referring to retargeting and prospecting, have used both but continue to see very few results from prospecting. Is there a way to improve our model? Doug, the short answer is yes. The one question is if you're, and this is by way of, I guess if you go back, if the metric you're looking for is ultimately what's driving a sale, on a side-by-side comparison, you will see retargeting will outperform prospecting 99% of the time. So we don't disagree with you there that if you look at these two, what again you have to look at is measuring your prospecting pool over a series of time. So essentially using prospecting to drive somebody to put them then into your remarketing pool and tracking them separately so that you can then understand over time how well do they convert to a sale. Most times when we see these sorts of models, and I think, Doug, this could be more of a longer conversation we could take offline, is if you're trying to just measure off of that first media exposure, if it's from a prospect versus retarget, if that's ultimately leading to a conversion. And it's like I said, in those cases, 99% of the time, you're going to see retargeting outperform prospecting. You've got to look at it over a little bit more period of time of how well they perform once you've gotten them into your funnel, as well as how they perform there, ultimately driving to a sale. So the second question came from Jason. And it says, with the 30 to 60-day window you mentioned on purchases, when is it too late to get started this college basketball season and still be impactful? Well, the question for that is really around what ticketing product you're trying to sell. We will have clients starting to run single game tickets starting in December and run that all the way through middle to late February. As it relates to season ticket and mini plans, most of our clients will stop season tickets right around the first part of November, and we'll run mini plans through about the middle of, about through the end of November, maybe the first week of December. So for mini plans, you probably have about another 2 weeks left before you'd want to stop. Single game, you can continue for a lot longer than that. Okay, so going to get back to because no questions. So going back to the last campaign live learning around duration, investment, and flighting, what we recommend to clients is typically you have to give your media campaigns 4 to 5 weeks in market. I think the biggest misconception that we see here, and this is not just, this is pretty much across the board, is that everyone believes fans are actually looking to buy, and that's not necessarily the case. Most fans are just like every other consumer, as you know, there tend to be more browsers, they tend to be more shoppers kind of looking and needing to have multiple exposures before they're willing to transact. The thought that we typically get and a lot of the mindsets that come are, I can show somebody one ad, they're ready to buy, they're ready to transact, let's move forward. So that's where we say if you need to have duration, especially if you're getting into a much more high involved decision like a season ticket, it may take 7-10 exposures before that fan really can make that decision if they want to. And this can involve clicking on an ad unit, going to your landing page, getting some additional information, not transacting, and then maybe being retargeted later and then coming back. It's a cycle to ultimately get them to make that transaction. It's what you're trying to do is continue to move them down that consideration path. So from a duration standpoint, we're always recommending give it a minimum of 4 to 5 weeks. That repeat exposure really solidifies your offer and your message. And lastly, it allows you to build that remarketing pool. So Doug, one of the things that, to your question, talking about how prospecting and retargeting work together, prospecting generates that kind of first interest signal. We then put them into our remarketing pool, and now we're able to continue to work them and continue to build that conversation and that relationship to move them down. So that's kind of what we recommend. And again, we say the minimum. We would look, I think most campaigns, you start 30, 60 days out from the season, or 30, 45 days out from the season, and you want to run it through at least a good midpoint, further part of the season, depending on the ticketing product that you're running. As far as from an investment level, since most of the folks deal at a local market, we have a lot of questions from our clients about what's the proper level of spend. We've typically found when you take kind of an average market size, and when you kind of look at ticketing products, if you're talking about football where you've got schedules of once a week, your radius that you can pull from is about 200 miles. If you're more of a local market product like basketball or baseball, it's maybe more of about a 50-mile radius. But we typically see within kind of those parameters and on an average market size, that the average spend needs to be about $1,500 a week. And this is so that you've got ample impressions in the marketplace to not only get a wide enough net, but also get that repeat exposure that you're looking for. And again, this is kind of one is that clients tend to underspend. We've had certain clients come in and want to spend $1,000 over 6 weeks, and you just see that if you're not investing enough in the media and the marketplace, you're not able to get enough traction, get enough impressions, get enough exposure. And that kind of relates to the last piece, which goes hand in hand with flighting, is one of the biggest, I think, misconceptions is people will only transact the day of a game. So we've had clients approach us saying, I only want to run media on game days. Our general rule of thumb is keep a consistent media approach. You want to avoid those stop and start windows. And the data really shows this, because when you kind of look at these 3 variables in aggregate, if you maintain, at least a 4 to 5 week campaign, if you have an ample level of investment in the marketplace and you're maintaining consistent flighting in market, your results are going to go up pretty significantly in the neighborhood of 10%, 25%, if not higher. I mean, we've seen that on a consistent basis. As that relates to the last point of the flighting, kind of the rule of thumb there on this notion of throttle up, throttle down. Some of our clients who tend to be more, we've got a few NFL clients, we'll run a consistent level of ticketing media in market throughout the week, but then we'll throttle it up typically 72 hours before a game. So you'll see if it's a Sunday game, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we'll ramp up that media considerably. Monday after, we'll throttle it down, still continue to run a pulse, but then throttle it back up as we get closer within that 72 hour of game day. And that's much better than just going completely dark, because you're still going to have people shopping. You want to reinforce the message. You want to continue to reinforce and drive those impressions to that fan on a consistent basis. All right, so I think we've covered the first two sections, and we'll get through the last two rather quickly here so we can open up to any other questions. And going down to the third section is the path to purchase. So again, going back to our direct mail model, we focused on Campaign Live about what gets people engaged, what gets them to click and ultimately coming to our landing page. Now we're focused on how do we get them to close? How do we entice them, get them to take action, and then ultimately close the sale? So from a best practices standpoint here, on the path to purchase, kind of two key things. One is our goals here, as we talked about earlier on the last slide, is it's really about informing the fan and enticing them to take action. And then lastly is what are the things that we can do to close the sale. From a best practices standpoint, probably the most underutilized asset is the landing page. And I'll get into this in a minute, but this is probably, if you take one key learning away from today's webinar, is good landing pages can improve your conversion rates by up to 100%. This is the whole idea of if you're spending the money through the media campaign to drive somebody to get them to click on a campaign, once you've got them there, really focus on taking those close rates from, what we've seen on the low end of 5 to 15% to up on the high end, trying to get them up to 40 to 50%. And that can be, and there's a couple of ways by doing that through the landing page, which we'll cover off on. And then secondarily is removing friction from the transaction. And this is really about providing multiple response options. So I'll get into the first part about landing pages and the importance there. Can't tell you how many times we've seen that campaigns have skipped over the landing page and essentially directly linked the web banner to the ordering platform. So this is the whole idea of somebody clicks on an ad and the next thing they see is it's essentially buy now. The analogy we like to make is saying that's like if you opened a direct mail piece and you're expecting to see a letter, or you're expecting to see product information, and all you get was an 800 number on it that says, call me now. So really, how effective would that be? And I will use a Troy Kirby analogy here, where Troy likes to prove this point where he'll go up to a young lady he's never met, he'll say hello, and he'll ask her to marry him. And Troy's point is, she'll never marry me if she doesn't date me first. And that's a very vital analogy here, is the landing page is really, think of it as that opportunity to date the individual. So what really makes up a good landing page? There's three things that your landing page or your ticketing page should do. It's got to excite, it's got to inform, and it's got to stimulate. And these are things, again, that we commonly see are misused. We've seen tremendous amount of times where that link just goes right to the ordering page. And those ordering pages maybe aren't always the most conducive. So from an excite standpoint, it's really about building the hype. It's about really selling the experience, not just what's on the field, but really sell the entire experience. This is especially if you're a college athletics program, the ability to focus on the traditions that you have, the ability to focus on, especially if you're targeting families, what those kid experiences are. This is a great place where you can use video. We've seen a lot of examples where clients will use video to show that entire game day experience. Really use this opportunity to kind of show what makes your experience unique and a can't miss opportunity. So it goes back to, not everyone's ready to buy. They need to be convinced. So this is a great way to use multimedia to capture them and engage them. Secondarily is you want to inform them. A lot of times, you're selling multiple different ticketing products. People may want to look, they may want to have an opportunity to understand what are the various options, what are the various price points. So, a clear overview of your ticketing products, any sort of promotions that you're running, what the offers, the prices are. And then game day information is important. A lot of times decisions are made about, does this include parking? How do if I want to take local transportation? Some people are very much into promotions. And then, having a very good solid FAQ. A lot of these things will help get over those hurdles of really driving that information. And then lastly is the stimulation, is, have a clear call to action. Make sure that you can create a sense of urgency. Use things like a countdown clock. If you've got limited availability that can flash up, even things that are, a proactive close. Some sites, e-commerce sites that you may have been to, you could see you're kind of looking at a product and a pop-up will come up with the offer for a rep to come help answer questions for you. all those sorts of things, those applications that can really help kind of stimulate and close and answer those questions for the fan. Again, this is the number one place that we see the opportunity, is make sure that all that quality traffic that you're generating, don't assume that they're ready to transact, but make sure that you're there to really get them excited. You're informing them about what you have to offer, and then you're helping them close the transaction. This last comment here about Best Practice Plus is creating a tailored landing page based on your fans' target demographic. So back to the example I showed you earlier with South Carolina, where they had two different creative campaigns. They actually had different landing pages because young alumni had a different experience. They wanted to see hard hits and a lot of the action on the field, versus families wanted to see family fun and atmosphere. And that's just something, again, that the more sophisticated you get, and as you produce more of these, starting to look at how you can create more targeted campaigns that way, especially on the landing page front. Okay, so we have gone through, and just a quick example here of the landing page, and then we've got one last. This is actually not a ticketing landing page. This is actually a grocery store who is a sponsor of the Miami Dolphins, but literally hold this up as one of the most impressive examples of a landing page, because they've got all different types of things here. It's Publix, which is a grocery store, but they've got links to team content such as schedules and statistics. They've got interactive promotions where you can actually win swag, go to games. They use video very well. They're capturing a lot of content in the parking lots from tailgaters. And then they also include their product offers. So they actually do a game of the week or a meal of the week that's tied to each game, that's curated from a celebrity chef. But this is a great way. You wouldn't expect this. This doesn't look like a typical grocery store landing page, but it's a great way, and there's a lot that you can learn here about how to really kind of make that landing page or that ticketing page extremely vibrant and productive for your team. And then the last comment here is, how do you remove friction from the transaction? And very simply, it's about providing fans multiple options for engaging and transacting, not just doing an online ticket order. The vast majority of campaigns that we've seen have only allowed clients to have one transaction option, and that's to typically just click through to the online ticketing platform. We like to see and recommend doing as many of the four as you can. Do an online order, so obviously just link to your ticketing platform. A call, so something that can link and having your 800 number into your call center. Big, viewable, something that's an easy way to actually link through. Email. This is a lot of times folks can't talk right then, but they've got questions and they want to schedule an appointment. So having an email or a submission form that's very simple, of name, address, the ability to get their information, what they're interested, and schedule a time to call them back. And then lastly is online chat, where they can actually chat with an individual right there, or request a callback. So companies like Website Alive, I think some of you may know Brian Apgar, but that's a platform that we really like, because it's a great way of allowing the fan to really that they've got questions, and sometimes they don't necessarily want to talk to a rep, but they have the ability to kind of to make sure that they're getting the information they need. Because again, fans want to transact on their terms. And the other benefits of doing this by giving them multiple options is you're allowed to capture some data. So if you're doing even email or chat, there's a data capture aspect there that you can use for remarketing those clients. And then lastly is it allows your sales force to be most effective. If you've got more conduits, not just an online channel for transaction, but a way for your sales force to actually communicate and connect with that fan, they can then do what they're best at, which is really closing sales and in many cases upselling. Okay, going to take a quick pause, see if there's any more questions that have come in. Don't think so. Okay, guys, so we're about 5 minutes out from the top of the hour, and we'll wrap up here. So we've gone through the first three phases: strategy, planning, campaign live, and path to purchase. Just a real quick on campaign analytics. As we start to look at the campaign analytics, there's three goals. One is actually real time. So that's how do we leverage the data that's coming through on an hourly, daily basis about how my campaign's performing to make sure that I optimize my campaign. Second is really more on a post-campaign basis, is not just understanding what happened, how many tickets did I sell, but why did those results happen? And ultimately, you want to use that to inform your future campaigns, because your future campaigns, your ticketing products, and any sort of promotional offers that you may run. So there's two best practices here that I want to cover with you guys. One is making sure that you look beyond the click, because they can be deceiving. And then really the ability of what you can gain from real life market testing. So what I want to show you here is this slide, this little bit of an eye test, but I'll show you is this to point back to both of those concepts of how click can be deceiving, but also the ability to start to do real life market testing of offers. So what you see here is where it says creative, this is a list of all the different creative ads that were in the market, as well as the different offers. So we had a generic individual game ticket offer. We had a Monday hot dog promotion for this client, Thursday beer night, Friday fireworks. I think Troy bought all 36 Thursday beer night conversions were attributed. We had Sunday games, family night, and then the FBX stands for Facebook. These were just different creative concepts where they promoted a player, they promoted the mascot, and they promoted the team logo. Let's see. Real quick question. I think I got a note here. Doug York said he cannot see the presentation. If you guys can just cue me on chat, is everyone able to see the screen still? Somebody can just type in yes or no. I'll assume you guys can. And Doug, I'm not sure, but we'll make sure to get you a copy of the presentation so you can see it. So what we did here with this client was they wanted to test the effectiveness of a number of different offers and creative. So we served media across these, and then you could see the actual number of clicks for the ads. I've taken out here impressions, but you can see clicks, and then you see the click-through rate. So what's important to look here is if we were a lot of clients want to just optimize based on click-through rate. Their question is, well, what are your click-through rates? And really, the metric we want to look at is this last one of cost per acquisition. So if you kind of follow the chain here, the Facebook ads actually had the highest click-through rates, in many cases 5 to 10 times higher than what the display ads were. But if you look at conversions and the conversion rates, they actually had some of the lower conversion rates. So it's important to look through the entire stream so that you make sure that you're looking at the ads and the performance of not just the creative in the ads, but you're looking at it in totality, because ultimately what you want to do is determine what's driving the most cost-effective cost per acquisition. And as you can see here, the logo Facebook ads drove a cost per acquisition of $10.58, which was followed by Friday fireworks at $11.93. So this is a great way of being able to stack up media and look at what media and what creative, as well as additional offers. In their case, they wanted to see how well does a generic ticketing ad compare to, and using that as kind of the benchmark, how well does that perform versus some of these other products? And as you can see, with the exception of Monday hot dogs didn't perform as well as Sunday, the Sunday promotion didn't perform as well. So it's a great way of really making sure that you're not only optimizing your campaign, but you're looking at the performance across the entire stream, and not just using click-through rate, which is really an artificial. It's really an artificial metric. It's not something that you should be. It's not unimportant, but it's not the primary metric. You're on a cost per acquisition is ultimately what you should be looking to do. All right, so we've got one more question came in. Okay, Eric Kroll said yes, so I'm not sure if that's a question. Okay, so we'll go there. All right, so I think we've pretty much come to the end of the webinar. Just a quick summary, just of the best practices we've learned from across the 4 phases. Want to make sure that in your planning phase that you are really using that fan data beyond the demographics to inform the market, your digital ticketing strategy. So before you decide on your media tactics, really what can you learn about your clients? So look at their demographics, look at their site, the traffic of what type of content and sites they're engaging with, what type of devices they're engaging with, and what you can really understand about beyond their demographics, their behaviors and the attitudes that would ultimately determine the right ticketing products to match up with them. Make sure that you use prospecting and targeting in tandem. Again, we talked about it's not just important to continue to retarget those fans that are coming to your site or that you've had a touch point with, but continue to prime the pump and fill the funnel with new fans. From a creative standpoint, the ability to customize to your target audiences, and don't forget to promote multiple games. We talked about the importance of making sure that you've got the right duration, campaigns that are minimum 4 to 5 weeks, that you're putting ample investment in the marketplace, and that you've got some steady stream of flighting. You're not going dark, doing stops and starts. Most important lesson of the day is invest in your landing page strategy. Make sure you guys put ample time, put ample resources, put thought into how that can really be almost a digital articulation of what your game experience is, so that you can really wow your fans. And then make sure that you are providing multiple response options. We want to take that friction out of the transaction, so make sure that they can transact on their terms. And really, again, from an analytics standpoint, make sure you look deep. Don't use click-through rate as your metric of choice. Really look beyond that into the cost per acquisition, and constantly challenge yourself to test. When you test, whether it's offers, whether it's creative, whether it's different products, you're going to constantly learn something that's going to help you better strategize for your next campaign. Okay, so we're right at the top of the hour. I think we may be a few minutes over. I really appreciate everybody joining. We will have this WebEx or this webinar. We will post it, and we will send everyone a link, and you can link to it and watch it again. But before we stop, I wanted to just do one last check to see if there are any final questions. You can submit a question, or if you've got a comment, you can submit it through chat. But really appreciate everyone's time, and we'll just pause a minute here and see if there's a question that comes up. And again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll make sure that our information, both Kyle and my information, and Jenna, who's on the line as well, our information's here. If you want to follow up with any of us, if you've got additional questions, if you want to shoot us a note, we'll send you a copy of the webinar through a Dropbox link, because it's a little heavy with some of the imagery in there. But again, if you guys have no questions, then thank you for your time. And we're always around as a resource. And if you want to just talk digital ticketing, we'd love to have the conversation. Or you can always ping Troy Kirby as well, because he's never short of an opinion. So thank you guys for the time, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.